Hi, and welcome to Making Waves on Purpose. Today I'm joined by Bea Boccalandro. Bea is a friend and mentor. I took a class from her on corporate responsibility data about 15 years ago and have since kept up my relationship with her, hired her to help us when I was at PwC, which was so helpful. And I've watched with awe as she's grown her place in the community and space. She does data and storytelling better than anyone I know, and now has brought her intellect, her curiosity and enthusiasm to the question of what she calls job purposing. I'm really interested in corporate purpose and individual purpose, and this is a really interesting mix this conversation brings together. The episode is a bit longer than my normal 15 to 20 minutes, but well worth every minute. And now, Bea Boccalandro. Bea, thanks for joining us.
So great to be here with you, Jeff.
Well, tell us what you're up to. I know job purposing, and I sat back and watched in awe as you've written a book and have a TED Talk out there and just came back from your Asian book tour.
Yeah, it's resonating. You know, this is probably like 5 years ago. I gave a presentation at Toyota headquarters, and I was walking to my car, and I had parked really far because I was not driving a Toyota. So I was almost out of my car, so I was pretty far from the building, and I heard like this pitter-pat of steps running to catch up with me, and it was this young gentleman. I usually call him Jeff, but I'm not going to do that today, so we'll call him Bob today. And he basically said, "Bea, I saw on the meeting reservation system that there was a meeting about doing good at Toyota, and I snuck in. After I got in there, I realized it was only for top executives, but I stood in the back and I think they just thought I was catering." And I was like, why would he ignore his to-do list and like crash a meeting? And his next question answered that. And his question was, "I'm not an executive, but I want to do the things you talked about." And what I talked about was really having a company live a social purpose, right? So do something that's meaningful to employees and that's a contribution to society. And that question, it kind of haunted me. And I thought, well, how many Bobs are there? And can we help them? Can we help them even, Toyota is pretty advanced on this, but what if you're at a company that hasn't even started to think about what contribution it's meaning to make to society? And is there something that they can do? We know, like from Edelman research, that the number one reason people quit during this great resignation was lack of purpose. But that's not a super viable solution for a lot of people. It's like, well, I don't feel like I do anything meaningful week in and week out, so I'm just going to go get another job. Yeah, some people have that luxury. Some people can even change careers. But is there something that they can do that's not that radical? And basically the answer is yes, thank goodness. It took me 10 years to kind of look at the data enough and try it out. But basically, no matter what level of authority or agency someone has in a job position, there is something you can do to make a meaningful contribution to others or to society. We are so wired for that our physiology will reward us with this uplifting sense of purpose. And after the fact, this is all subconscious, by the way, we feel like it was a meaningful day because of it. So we don't have to wait for our senior leaders to do the work of moving the whole company towards contribution. We can do that on our own. So it's been such a fun journey getting this message out and hearing people's reactions and then getting stories of people applying it.
So tell me, how are people doing that? How are they finding and able to either change the role or change their mindset or approach to the role?
Yeah, great question. The variety is stunning. So I'll give you one example. I got contacted by one gentleman, but he was kind of speaking on behalf of two in Pennsylvania. They work at a construction company, but they're inspectors of some sort. And so they go from construction site to construction site. And they basically said, for some reason, I think one of their wives gave them my audiobook. They were listening to it on the truck. And as they were driving around, they realized we're driving down these roads where there's all this illegal dumping. And in the afternoons, we usually take a coffee break, which is a little redundant because we carry our thermos of coffee. And then we're just hyper caffeinating ourselves and looking at each other. So instead of doing that, why don't we just pull over for 15 minutes, throw into the bed of the truck as many things as we can, couches, TVs, whatever. We're a construction company. We know how to get rid of solid waste and go on our merry way. And by the time they contacted me, actually, the reason they contacted me was because we just finished 10 miles. We cleaned up 10 miles. And, they're getting recognized by their town for doing this. And so that's it. And the reason they contacted me was, again, because of the 10-mile milestone, but because they were like, this changed everything for us. It's a different, when we get to the site and we're getting rid of this stuff, people are like, where'd you get this? What's this TV or what's this couch doing there? And then we tell people what we did, and then they get inspired to do things. And it's kind of become a great reason to go to work. So that's one example. And a completely different example is a manager. So you can do this for yourself. You can job purpose for yourself, but you can also do it for your team. So there are managers that are now deciding, and this is an example in the book, so they just kind of replicated it, but apparently it's working really well for a lot of people. And instead of incentivizing people with a bonus of a gift card to fast food, say, they incentivize people with a charitable donation card that you can give a $50 charitable donation to the organization of your choice. And that has changed the whole dynamic in the teams, because let's say that you're the recognized employee for the month. You get your charitable donation card, and then the next meeting, you're invited to share, if you want, which organization you gave the donation to. And people tell these amazing stories. They say, I gave it to this organization, this sports organization, because when I was in high school, my parents were getting divorced, and it was a coach that helped me through all of this. And I really believe, coaches are underappreciated. And so they tell these stories of what's meaningful to them. Or I gave the card to the American Heart Association because my mother died at the age of 42 from a heart attack, and so it brings all this sense of caring into the workplace. So these are two really different examples, but there's everything in between. And there's also examples happening at really high levels as well of companies. So one company said, this is a pretty large B2B tech company, medium-sized B2B tech company. It's publicly traded. And this executive reached out to me and said, I read your book, and we are now, it's the first day on the job, everybody at the company gets stock, immediately, because I want them in the boardroom, pushing their values. And I thought, wow, I would not have expected that to be job purposing, right? But he saw the connection. He's like, this is what I can do to make a contribution to all my team members and their values into the boardroom. At the executive level, of course, job purposing looks very different. But
I love that. When I worked in hospitality, what feels like a lifetime ago, I was a big proponent of the fish philosophy, which was created based on the Pike Street Place fish market, where it was make work play, make their day, be present, and choose your attitude. And the thing I loved about that management model was it was all employee. It was all actions employees took. And it was about creating an enabling environment for them. And in fact, one day I went down to my reservations manager who was having a terrible day. And I was like, how are you choosing your attitude today? And she said, my attitude sucks today. So I'm making sure that all of my work is on the computer and I have no exposure to the guests today. And I was like, done, job done. Awesome. You're self-aware, you're managing yourself. But so I love these ideas of physicians heal thyself.
Yeah, well, that's a fascinating example because so I'm sure you're aware of this and probably your listeners are too, but we only have one processor in our brain, right? I mean, one of the reasons job purposing is so powerful, it's the same reason gratitude is. So one thing I would have said to her is, okay, if your attitude is terrible, try something. Like just spend the next 5 minutes doing something for someone else. And so this is job purposing. This is the miniature version. And it can be going into LinkedIn and giving someone a positive recommendation, right? It can be something that simple. And then go to check and see how your attitude is and whether you still need to stay away from customers. Because I actually do this in my presentations. So I'll tell people spend the next 5 minutes. You can't spend more than 5 minutes or $5 and do something for someone else. And before they do that, this is the easiest question to kind of ask is like, what is your stress level? Like, so measuring anxiety 1 to 10, do it. And then what I do at the end is I say, if your stress went up, go ahead and stand up. And frankly, there's usually 1 or 2 people. I have chocolate for them. I'm like, okay, that didn't work. Basically, about 0, it goes up close to 0. I mean, a room of 300 person is 0 pretty much. And then about 1/3, it stayed the same, but 2/3, their stress went down. And the thing is, it's the same power of the gratitude, right? But it's more powerful because then you feel like you did something meaningful. So they know that your cortisol goes down, your oxytocin goes up, they being scientists, your oxytocin goes up, dopamine goes up, serotonin goes up. Like these are physiological changes. And frankly, I would have never had the guts to do this in an auditorium had there not been really solid research showing this. So that just shows you that. So anyway, it's just one of the powers of job purposing. So if you see her again, try this.
I mean, it's interesting because you've probably got listeners who are like, I didn't have to quit my job. I could have done this. But you also have companies saying, hey, listen, how can I enable people to take this journey? And I'm really fascinated by the Edelman Trust Barometer just came out. And one of the things they found, which is a bit shocking, is that the employee newsletter is more well trusted than mainstream media. So companies now have this platform that is reaching their employees. How can they enable, encourage, elicit this job purposing?
Yes. So, I mean, one thing I'll say before I answer that directly is that the work that companies are embarking on to uncover their purpose and ignite it across the company gets you to the same place. So it gets you to the place where employees end their work week feeling like, yes, I did something meaningful. And it's actually, frankly, even better than unleashing employees on their own to do their job purposing because something done as part of a larger group, I mean, we're very social, is even better. So I want to say that first. I help companies with their corporate purpose. So, and that work is really powerful. If a company or a department wants to help employees do their own job purposing, first of all, your culture has to be positive enough. So if people don't feel safe or if people don't feel respected, then start there. Don't go to my book yet. Get there first because you don't want to introduce something that is about a contribution to others or society, which is the definition of job purposing, doing something that's a contribution, a meaningful contribution to others or society, when people feel like they are being disrespected or they are being exploited or, so you have to start there. Your culture has to be positive enough. Once your culture is positive, the 2 big barriers to people doing this are permission and kind of finding the ideas. It's a really simple concept, but it's very difficult for us to figure out ways to purpose our own jobs. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. But if you give them permission, so it's a thing. So it's like at each of our team meetings, let's have someone come up with an idea or let's have someone come up with 3 ideas for job purposing in the next month, and the team will choose one. Now you've kind of given the permission, like this is a sort of a semi-official thing that we do here. And that will unleash a lot. And then you're going to have to help them come up with the ideas, which again, be patient with your team because this is a lot harder than one thinks at first blush. Here, I would say, I mean, you can, frankly, you might want to go to my website, beaboccalandro.com under resources, because there's hundreds of examples. My book has hundreds of examples. And part of it is just seeing enough examples to go like, oh, I can modify this, I can modify that. And part of it is shifting. You mentioned the word mindset, and mindset is real important here. So our work mindsets are not around contribution. I hate to say this, but they're around efficiency. They're around getting the things done that we need to get done. So a simple exercise that people can do to shift their mindset so that it's not only about efficiency, but also about contribution is to several times a day, just ask. There's 3 questions in the book, but the third one you have to kind of read the book for, but 2 questions. And those 2 questions are, whatever I'm doing right now. So ideally, these are relatively random times. Or they catch you on relatively random tasks. So whatever I'm doing now, is there a way to do it so that it makes a meaningful contributions to others or society? So let's just say my phone reminds me, answer these 2 questions. Right now, it's 2:16 in the afternoon, and I happen to be buying office supplies. And it's like, okay, I was buying office supplies. Is there a way to do that in a way that's a meaningful contributions to others or to society? Is it's like, yeah, I can buy sustainable office supplies. I never thought of that. So it's bringing that mindset of contribution into whatever task you're doing. The other question to ask is, the last person I interacted with, how are they doing? And that question unleashes things like, well, actually, Susie looked really tired now that I think about it. And, this might be someone that just works in the cubicle next door. And now that I think about it, I think I heard that she was moving. And that might unleash the whole idea of like, well, why don't we ask the team if she needs any help with the move? Or something that is more along the personal lines. And that it may have been a customer that you interacted with last. And then that question might unleash job purposing that can be done to help customers more. So those 2 questions will help shift the mindset to a place that's more productive to come up with the ideas and for your team members. And so that exercise should do the trick, really. I mean, it might take a couple of weeks, but between those 2 things, the permission and the exercise, then you'll start seeing all sorts of flourishing of purpose in your teams.
I love that. And I like that it's actionable in a really tangible way. What do you see on the horizon that businesses need to be thinking about in this space? Things that keep you up at night or you're worried about? One of the things you mentioned, corporate purpose. I also work with clients on this. And sadly, I think I see like too many companies not understanding how purpose can be a transformational element within their organization and their culture, and instead are using it as a kind of PR bumper sticker. And it's getting conflated to be a synonym to, well, everything in the sustainability, corporate responsibility space is now all synonyms. There's companies that don't have investors that use the ESG moniker, which was created specifically about investors' interest in these issues and how it drove market performance. So everything just becomes this lumped in. And I think purpose is falling into that same thing, even though I think of it almost like a B Corp movement within mainstream business. But how are you seeing it play out?
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion. And Jeff, you and I and everybody else in the field, we're partly to blame for this.
Yep.
So we have a lot of terms, we use them differently. And so I think confusion is costly. And so things that kind of worry me, I think that you hit on one. I do think we'll figure it out and kind of reach some sense of clarity. And I also think, so I had this experience. I'm obviously not going to mention the brand or even the industry because it'll be pretty easy to go on my website. But I had this experience with an executive who read my book and called me and said, can you help us with our corporate purpose? And I asked a few questions and he answered them in a way that I thought he was really going to do the deep work. And, we signed up, my firm signed up. So we did a survey and we talked to people and their team members were unbelievably excited about this. It was a very positive culture. Frankly, the CEO was a very strong CEO, very positive culture. And he got really, really hung up on the purpose statement that his communications people couldn't really nail down. And we brought outside help on communications people. And it was that the statement didn't work for him, that just kind of slowed things down. And then unfortunately, organizational changes happened and he ended up having to leave. So, because the company was bought out. So basically the work never really took place. And it was all because there was such an emphasis on the statement and there was all this forward energy. Who knows? Maybe they would have gotten to a great place where purpose is ignited, this unifying purpose across the entire firm, and then they get bought out and then it's squashed. Maybe the outcome would have been the same if there hadn't been this focus, so much of a focus on the communication. But to me, it kind of meant that we're a little obsessed with the soundbite and the communication of the purpose of a company and overestimate the value of that and underestimate the value of the transformation inside the organization.
Well, that makes so much sense to me because no matter what CVS's purpose statement was, the fact that they walked away from cigarettes spoke so much louder than any sentence would have. Like the execution or the activation of their purpose in real terms is what made it real. You talked about positive cultures and it's essentially has to be authentic. Otherwise, your stakeholders are going to see through it and go like, and what could be more authentic than walking away from $1 billion business, right?
Right. And maybe it's like, just do the work first and then find out how to tell your story later, right? Because it's just, walking into an organization that is committed and actively contributing something positive to the world is like nothing else in the world. This is why nonprofit employees, even though they get paid, somewhere between 40 and 9% less, have less career security, less of a career ladder, or working on old equipment, perform better on all the satisfaction measures out there, right? So I think that this idea that there's this shiny contribution that the company's going to make that's going to be in 7 words is, I think we get distracted by that instead of just like, let's see how we can contribute and how this department does it versus that one. And just do the contribution for a while and let the statement kind of rise from the organic efforts out there. Seems like a better way to go.
I love that. And let's leave it there. This has been a longer one, but a fabulous discussion, and we'll have to have you back.
I would love that, Jeff. Keep up the good work.
Thanks so much. Great to talk to you.